Hey, one more thing before you go. Welcome to another episode of Over the Teacup Sunday. Yes, this has become a Sunday afternoon pleasure for Diane and I. In this episode, we're going to continue to take a deep dive into the world of 2023 Oscar nominated films and talent. Today, we take a look at two of the most talked about movies which have won a plethora of film awards across the world. One is All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a third remake of a critically acclaimed film based on a book. And part two of this episode is going to be The Banshees of Inisherin, a 2022 tragic comedy, which is the first time I've ever heard that. I've never heard of something called a tragicomedy. It was directed, written, and co-produced by Martin McDonagh. I'm your host, Michael Hurst. I'm here with my lovely wife and co-host, Diane.
Happy Sunday, everyone.
Welcome to the show. Hey, everybody. This is really kind of cool, Diane. I think that this is the first time I think ever, that we've really got through the majority of Oscar nominated films this time.
Well, maybe way back in the day we might have done close, but it has been a long time since we've had this many films watched.
Yeah, we got really lucky. I think part of it is the age of digital media has allowed us the benefit of being able to uh, get a hold of some of these films and be able to watch them from the comfort of our own home.
Yes, because I don't think we've even been to the theater to see any of them.
Not yet, but sometime in the next couple of weeks, we are going to go see Avatar: Way of Water,
Yeah,
and we're going to go see The Whale. I think because I think both of those have some interesting aspects that need to be touched upon for different reasons.
yeah. No, I really want to see both of those too. I just wish they weren't just in the theater, but that's fine. I'll go. You'll drag me kicking and screaming, but I'll go.
Well, I would rather watch them from home. You
Yeah.
know that we're equipped. We'll just say we're equipped to almost be a movie theater. The only thing we're missing is a ticket taker and a popcorn machine.
Yeah. We don't need enough popcorn to do that, so it's fine.
No, 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 no. And somebody to yell, "Stop doing that.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Sit down." So,
Hmm.
anyway, let's get started on this one. I think we're going to start with the Banshees of Inisherin. What do you think?
So they called it a tragic comedy.
Tragicomedy,
Interesting. Yeah, I see it definitely.
which we're going to
Um,
talk about here. Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to say it wasn't good. It was good. It's just it
It's dark.
it's
It's a dark humor.
very dark, very
Yeah.
very dark. Yeah,
Well,
and for like the first hour, it doesn't seem it. You're kind of like, is anything actually happening? Like, is something going to happen? You
yeah.
know?
Well, let's tell everybody else about what the film is about. And for those of you that haven't seen it, as I said in the intro, it's a 2022 tragic comedy film written and directed by Martin McDonagh. And Martin, please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. It stars Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson as two lifelong friends who find themselves in an impasse when one abruptly ends the relationship. The movie received mixed reviews from critics, with some praising McDonagh's sharp writing and the performances of Farrell and Gleeson. They're both great actors. First time I was introduced to Gleeson, I think you and I both, is when he hosted Saturday Night Live. We're going, who is that?
Yeah,
We didn't know
yeah.
who. Yeah, we didn't know who he was.
It was great
Um,
though.
while others found the film to be overly dark and muddled in its tone, however, most agreed that the Banshees of Inisherin.
Easy for you to say.
I should go back to my 42% Irish roots, right? Inisherin.
There you go. See, you can say it when you say it Irish.
Exactly. um, follows their relationship to a dramatic breaking point and alarming consequences for both of them. Kerry, Condon, and Barry Keoghan also star. In my opinion, it is a unique, thought provoking film that tackles serious themes with humor and heart. Farrell and Gleeson are both known for their excellent acting skills, and they don't disappoint in this movie. Their chemistry and banter make the film both hilarious and touching, and they bring depth and nuance to their characters. The story itself is a mixture of comedy and tragedy, and McDonagh navigates the tonal shifts with skill and confidence. I mean, the movie carried well. I mean, other than the first hour was a little slow, but it really pieced together really well. The film deals with the themes of grief, regret, and the complexity of human relationships, and it does so with both humor and pathos. It's celebrated for its complex display of friendship, life on a remote island, and depression at its peak. The Banshees of Inisherin, an unforgettable exploration of friendships, loyalty, and the consequences of actions, which we'll get more in depth into. Um, what did you think? I mean, overall, what did you think?
I the movie sat with me for a few days. Um, so overall, I liked it. I wouldn't hate it if they won. I really think, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I and we're going to talk about the other movie later, but there is another uh, actor who's nominated for Best Actor who a few months ago I've been like, oh yeah, he's got it, no problem. No one else deserves it but him. Um, I think that it overall is a good movie. I think that there was another actor nominated for Best Actor that I was like, oh, no one can do better than him. Colin Farrell, I'll tell you, I wouldn't hate if he won. I think he he broke my heart in this movie. I mean, I was sitting there feeling my heartbreak for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because as we were sitting there, I had told you that I had I really felt for that character. I mean,
Yeah,
he made me feel like wow, and it brought back some serious memories for myself. It triggered those in regard to the portrayal of the character itself, the situation itself, and how the movie was carried forward. So he did an outstanding job, I think, in
yeah,
allowing us to connect with him on a very, very deep level.
yeah,
I think the he presented to us somebody that we liked, somebody that we had empathy and compassion for,
hmm
and kind of like what the hell, and the transformation at the end was very unexpected.
yeah.
Um,
And I I still I still loved him in the end, but it was hard to do so.
Well, and I do like Farrell and Gleeson both had
Mhm.
previously worked together on another McDonagh directorial debut film called In
Well,
Bruges,
they're actually best friends in real life.
and they're best friends in real life. So I think that that was able to contribute to the overall context of the film itself and the story, because
Yeah,
they actually had a relationship together
yeah,
outside of that particular film.
yeah,
So when everything took place and everything went down, they were able to kind of portray it more in a realistic perspective.
mhm.
Like, wow, if in real life this really happened, this is how it's going to affect me. And I think they took that to heart when they presented their characters.
I would hope that if something happened in real life, that it wouldn't get to that point.
Yeah,
Um,
but
but I also found that I really know that I do not ever, ever, ever want to live on a very remote island. That would not do for me whatsoever.
yeah,
Oh
that
my God,
yeah,
no.
yeah, I agree with you.
And speaking of that, Kerry Condon, who plays Colin Farrell's sister, she's nominated for Best Supporting Actress,
Yes.
and I wouldn't hate it if she won either. She
No,
she
I
was
think
great.
overall, I think the whole cast did a really excellent job
Oh,
in
yeah,
regard to it. The film has already won an outstanding number of awards. It had its world premiere at the 79th Venice Film International Film Festival on September 5th, 2022, and then went on to receive widespread critical acclaim, and praise was given to McDonagh's direction and screenplay as well as the performances of the cast. So I think that it really gave credence to the fact that it deserved an Oscar nomination because I won't go. I won't list everything that they have in all of the different film festivals and the other awards committees that they've won or that
It's
they've.
been it's
I'm
been a
sorry,
bunch.
but
It's
it's
been
but
a
yeah,
bunch.
the list is too long to list here. We'd
Yeah,
be here for 20 minutes.
yeah,
So it absolutely belongs within the whole all the categories. I was going to say
yeah,
just the film category, the best film category, but I think it overall Colin and Gleeson and Condon and they all deserve the nominations that they get. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings if they won them.
yeah. I don't mean to leave Brendan Gleeson out. I guess he used to be a teacher.
I didn't
He
know that.
hasn't been an actor for that long, from what I'm understanding. But he used to be a teacher and never really thought about being an actor. So I mean, for that, he's great. He's really great. I
Yeah.
just um, I don't know why, but I just felt more pull and more heartbreak for Colin Farrell's character. So they're both nominated for Best Actor. I would pick Colin, not because Brendan did a horrible job or anything, but just I connected more with the heartbreak of that character. And man, it was kind of depressing. It, I mean, I think we should warn everyone. If you're going to watch this movie, make sure you're in a really, really good space and a good mood to begin with. Because if you're kind of in having a down day, don't start this movie because it will not bring you up, even though there is some comedy in it.
And I agree with that. I think that it's the story itself is a mixture of comedy and tragedy, and
Mhm.
the tonal shifts that are there emphasize that the film deals with themes of grief, regret, and the complexity of human relationships. And it does it, as I said earlier, it does it with the humor, but it also allows for the empathy and the compassion, and not just for one character, for several characters. I mean, you get to understand what it's like to be living on a remote island way back. I should have gotten the time period that this was taking place, but I think it was
I think it was I want to say
30s.
the 30s. I
I
was
think
going
it
to
was
say
the
the.
30s. I
Mhm.
agree with you. I think it was the 30s, but you get the seclusion, the fact that it's a small island and everybody knows what everybody's doing, no
And they
matter
do the
what.
same thing. Everybody seems to do the same thing every day. Nothing
Nothing
changes.
changes. Nothing
It's the
changes.
same routine for every single person on that island. Oh God, please just
And
don't
and
kill
there's
me
so
now.
much, yeah,
Uh,
and there's that, like, look at the woman that runs the general store.
yeah.
She is so desperate for news and
Mhm.
conversation because she's so isolated and
Yeah.
doesn't know what's going on outside of there, that everybody that comes in, she's constantly going, "What's the news? What's the news? I'll give you your mail, I'll give you this, but what's the news? Give me the news."
Mhm.
Because she's like desperate for a conversation, desperate for somebody to tell her what's going on outside of their little island. And across um, the bay, I guess it would be a bay, the Civil War between the IRA and the Catholics and the Protestants and all that were were just going at it.
You
So
could
you
hear
could,
the gunfire from the island. They could
yeah, you
hear
could
it.
hear,
Yeah.
you could stand on the shore and you could hear the gunfire and the cannons going off and this kind of a thing. So, but they weren't. They were set aside, and this is this island that they were on in Inisherin. Go back to my Irish Inisherin. It's the only way I can
But
say it. The the fact that it's a fictitious island. It's a fictitious island. You get to believe the
oh
way
yeah.
that this film was put together, that that island actually exists, those people actually exist, and it was based upon actual people, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at the end of it, we even said, is that really real? Like, is that a real island? I think we looked it up.
Yeah, look it up.
Because you do believe it. And it's a very different, I don't know, I think it's a very different movie from so many movies out there. But this isn't really a typical movie we would watch. So, I don't know if there's movies that are similar or not, but I was I like I said, it sat with me. Even when
Well,
I go back to think about it, I feel affected by this movie.
it reaches you on a deep, deep level. I think
Yes.
anybody with a best friend, anybody that's lost their best friend, anybody that is struggling with their best friends, or
Mm.
relationships in general with regard to other people around you, your sister, your brother, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, your son, your daughter. I think that it resonates in such a way that it presents the reality of complex relationships between humans
And communication.
and communication, and how easily that that relationship can be infiltrated by negativity.
Yeah.
And again, go back to what you just said with the lack of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And how important that is, especially, I mean, it it's funny how few people were on this island. They did the same thing every single day of their lives, and yet they could actually lose connection with one another. Yet they're so closely they're in close contact with one another, but they lose communication with each other.
Yeah, especially being on that little tiny island. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, and I tell you what, it personally, I think the island looked cold and
Yes.
wet and
Yes.
poor.
And depressing.
Now,
Very depressing.
we're not trying to dissuade you from watching this movie if you haven't watched it yet. If
I
you
think you
haven't
should
watched it
watch
yet, I would
it. You
highly
should.
recommend it.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely watch it.
Yeah,
Just be careful of what kind of a mood you're in when you start this movie. That's all.
I, I think so. I think it may trigger you for some specifics that you need to be careful with, but all in all, I think that it also allows us to reflect within ourselves. Like, okay, wait a minute, what can I do if I'm in that same situation? Is there something that I can do that can get something resolved? And we don't want to give too much away about the plot, but obviously we all know that here are two best friends that one of them abruptly ends the relationship and he has absolutely no idea why. And
Mm-hmm.
then you see the intricacies of all the other relationships that interlace
Mm-hmm.
with everything. So, yeah, all in all, I would highly recommend it. I think they do deserve an Oscar nomination. I think they do deserve to win in certain respects. I mean, we have other films out here that we've been reviewing that they deserve to win just as much. This is going to be a very, very tight Oscars.
I think it will be. Yeah, and
Uh,
and the BAFTA awards, the ones that take place in the UK, I think they're I think they're tonight. Um, Banshees and any every how come I can
Everything,
never
everywhere, all at once.
right and Elvis. Those three they're saying are the top three contenders at the BAFTAs, and then whoever wins the BAFTA, typically it's a straight line to the Oscars. So um, it's definitely a movie we're seeing. Just and I have to admit, right after it was over, we both sat there and went, ugh, ugh. Like, really?
Well, and I think for
But
me
then,
personally, it triggered me on
yeah,
my own situation in certain respects, and because of that, it's like, wow, you really have to be careful with it. But
yes.
all in
And so
all,
when it sat with me for a few days, then it, it got better, and I ended up really liking the movie the more time passed after watching it, which is so bizarre. That doesn't usually happen for me. So
well, my opinion overall is you should see it if you haven't seen it yet. It's worth the watch, and you have the opportunity to kind of get to know these characters at an in-depth perspective. The cinematography was done very, very well. The
yeah,
direction was done very, very well. The acting was done very, very well. I think the between the characters themselves, because several of those individuals were friends anyway, that
mhm,
just enhanced the whole performance and the content of the film itself. And
yeah.
you embarked on this journey with them, which allowed empathy and compassion and kind of a what the hell at a couple of different times. So
And some
I would,
heartbreak.
yeah, so I would say good. Now for part two. Are you ready for
Mhm.
part two?
Sure.
We're going to go with it. Now, this just happens to be one of those episodes where we're going to do Another movie that unfortunately seems like a lot of these Oscar movies this year are really depressing and
Depressing, hard to watch.
heartbreaking,
Yeah, hard to watch,
hard to
heartbreaking.
watch, make you
Hmm.
think, make
Yeah.
you kind of take a reflective moment, and so forth. And this next movie is a remake, and it's been remade three times. This is the third remake, but it's done from the German perspective, from an individual from Germany, and I think that they did a really good job in this particular one also. So let's jump into that one. All Quiet on the Western Front is a powerful and moving film that depicts the brutal realities of war through the eyes of a young German soldier named Paul Baumer, played by Felix Kammerer, who did an outstanding job. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's directed by Edward Berger. The film is an adaptation of Eric Marie Remarque's classic anti-war novel of the same name and has been nominated for several Oscars. Just like all the movies that we've been discussing, it's been nominated for a plethora of awards also, and it was a critically acclaimed um, movie when it first came out in 1930, and then again when Ernest Borgnine and Richard Thomas did it in 1979,
No.
somewhere
Yeah.
thereabouts.
And that was a
Um,
made for TV movie, the
yeah, it was made for
79.
TV movie. So what is the explicit? This movie takes us through the harrowing journey of Baumer and his fellow soldiers as they are sent to fight on the front lines of World War One. The horrors of war are shown in all their starkness, from the deafening sound of artillery and machine gun fire to the relentless physical and mental exhaustion of the soldiers. That was done extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Berger's direction and cinematography capture the devastation impact of war on both soldiers and civilians alike. And whether it be the Germans, the French, the Americans, whoever it happened to be, it really leaves the audience deeply affected. Kammerer delivers a standout performance as Baumer. He captured the character's transformation from a naive and enthusiastic recruit to a traumatized and disillusioned soldier. He portrays the physical and emotional toll of war with a rawness and intensity that is both moving and alarming. Um, it I I really don't want to, but this morning we were watching uh, Sunday morning,
CBS.
CBS Sunday
Mm-hmm.
morning, and they brought up a really good point. This movie is even though it's about World War One and the disillusionment and so forth, they and I agree with this. I think that the war in Ukraine kind of illuminates that. It really
They were talking about there's parallels to it.
there are some parallels to it, and I think unfortunately those parallels are too close to home because Russia and Putin are throwing naive young people and people who don't want to go to war. And they had protest, as everybody's aware of. There were protests and so forth in Russia of these guys not wanting to go to war. They didn't want to do it. Russia, in this, we're not going to make this a political thing, but Russia invaded a country that was not a threat to them whatsoever. They just did it because they wanted the resources in the land and to reassimilate Ukraine back into Russia, and there was no need for it. And
Oh,
the devastation and the destruction and everything that goes along with it, the loss of life, is just devastating. And watching this movie, I think, reflected that more so because that's exactly what the Germans did
yeah. And
when they,
it's happening today, and we see it on the news, and then we watch this movie, and it's like I feel like it's just
yeah,
it, like they said this morning, this shows what happens in war, and it shows the reality of war, hoping that it won't happen again.
the person that wrote it, it was a World War One veteran,
Hmm.
German veteran
Right,
that lived it. And he wrote about it and from his perspective and how he was so disillusioned and thrown into this war that once
right,
he got into it, he went, "We shouldn't be here,"
right. Yeah,
and watched
and
all of his friends die around him.
yeah,
So yeah, it
it
is.
it's oof, talk about a tough to watch movie.
It
Wow.
is, and so the direction, the cinematography was done extremely well.
Oh,
It put you right in the middle of their lives, the action, the war zone,
Mm,
the fear, the doubt, the anger, the depression.
mm.
You know, it puts you right in the middle of it, in my opinion.
Well, and I noticed this morning on the show, the director, and is it Edward Berger or Berger? I didn't catch it this morning. I
I
don't
think it's
know.
Burger.
Sorry, Ed. Um, uh,
You did a really good job,
he
but
did a great job. I mean, magnificent. But he mentioned something that I hadn't thought of, that he was talking about, what he wanted the audience to experience, and he mentioned the vibration of war. And I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, that's true.
we
You
felt the
really could
vibration
feel
of the war.
like you were there, and you could feel the vibration of the ground as it shook.
And
I
we,
mean,
now, granted, we have a surround sound system with
yes, but,
Dolby, and
and I'm
that
sure
can,
people, can you imagine seeing it in the theater with the seats that vibrate? I mean, you're going
well,
to feel it.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
our surround sound system is very good,
Yeah.
and it gives us a realistic atmosphere for being in within these films.
Hmm.
And yeah, that absolutely felt like you were sitting in the trenches with these poor guys.
It was scary. It was just
Yeah,
so scary.
but riveting,
Yes.
scary but
And
riveting.
and
You
also hard.
and heartbreaking because you could
Yes.
see what they're experiencing, you could feel what they're experiencing. And these guys, I mean, the supporting cast, along with Kummer, I don't know if I pronounced his name correct. We got to get better about pronouncing these guys' names. Um, they also delivered very strong performances, particularly
Yeah.
Sebastian
Everybody.
Holk as the grizzled veteran Kaczynski. These guys gave brilliant performances
Yeah.
within their context because you relate to them as well. So not only are you following the main guy's journey, but you're
Hmm.
also following these people that he has come to become friends and rely on and family, basically.
Yeah.
And Tobias Moretti as the sympathetic and conflicted Kantorek, which you guys, if you watch the film, you'll know who these people are. The ensemble cast works together seamlessly to create a powerful and emotional depiction of the bond between soldiers and the impact of war on their lives. You know, it is I was in the military. I've been in the military, but I didn't go to war. Obviously, you all know that I'm a retired law enforcement officer. We fought a different kind of war, but the camaraderie, you know, my colleagues at work were were my family,
Hmm.
and in our family actually, excuse me, they were our family actually. And we understand that closeness. When you're in these type of situations, and when you rely on other people to to bring you home, and to protect you, and to watch your back, they become family to you. And it is you could see that interlace again, just like the previous movie we were just talking about. You get to understand how those threads are are sewed between individuals so that
Hmm.
you become part of their family, and you get to
Yeah.
experience every emotion, every fear, every empathy, every anger that they get to feel. It's amazing.
Especially those that actually make it out alive, and the guilt that overwhelms them, that
Yeah.
they weren't able to help their family.
And
Um,
back then they didn't know what PTSD was.
no,
They had no clue what PTSD was,
but they definitely had it at the
but
end.
they definitely had it. You know, they called
Oh,
it shell shock. I think back then they called it shell
yeah,
shock.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a sobering reminder of the devastating cost of war.
that's correct.
You know, it's a film that's both beautiful, it's harrowing, it leaves a lasting impact on
Yeah,
us as the viewer.
yeah.
It had powerful performances, skilled direction, and a poignant message. I think it deserved the Oscar nominations that it did
Mm,
get. I do believe that they absolutely deserve where they're at, even though this is the third time this film has been remade.
yeah, yeah. And
You
I
know,
I never saw the other two, so I had nothing to compare it to. But obviously they have a lot more technical ability in the movie making business today. So if you were to compare all three, and then the second remake was made for TV, so obviously they're not going to show you
oh,
as
I be prepared if anybody's under the age of 18 years old.
Yeah.
You use your discretion in regard to having them watch this movie. It
I
is
mean, in our
very,
it's our opinion, but yes, I
yeah,
wouldn't want when our kids were younger. There's no way I would have wanted them to see this because
it's very
it's.
violent. It is very truthful.
Hmm.
It is very realistic, and it
Well,
puts you. Well, I said earlier, it puts you right in the middle of a war zone.
and I think in to expand on that, anybody who's been to war and is home and might be struggling, this might
This
not be
may
this might not be the movie you want to see.
it might trigger you back again. And the fact that the individual that get my notes back up again real quick here. So Felix Kammerer, I
Mhm.
believe he's either English or Australian. I don't believe he's German. He might be. Um, but this is his first feature
Major.
film, and he did a brilliant job.
I would have never known that
Would have
that was
never
the
known
first
it.
feature film he'd been. I mean, he just wow.
And
He really carried the film.
the majority of these individuals that are in this film, I really don't recognize their names, and a lot
Yeah.
of them I don't recognize them. In fact, the film is actually in German.
Mm-hmm.
We had to watch it with English
So, well,
subtitles.
do they already have the subtitles already there? I mean, I don't
Not,
think
I
we
don't
did that
know.
with. Okay, well,
We were given the option of doing it in German with English
mm,
titles, subtitles, or English overdub with English titles, or
right.
English with German subtitles. It was
Well,
kind of
it
crazy.
worked because there's some foreign films that are harder to watch than others where even if you have the subtitles, it doesn't connect still. This did. I wasn't even noticing that
Yeah,
they
I
were
didn't even
actually.
notice.
I mean, it really, really works. So if you're somebody who doesn't typically like the subtitled films, it really was great. I mean, it you didn't lose anything with that.
No, you really didn't. And I think that again, the whole ensemble cast, everybody that was involved, the cast, the crew. I mean,
Hmm.
the realism in this film
Uh,
was just unbelievable.
Devastating.
Yeah.
It's really,
Again, it
really
makes you. It actually, after watching CBS Sunday this morning and them commenting on this film and
mhm.
showing the clips from it, it just brings about the. Again, it reminded me of the realism of the fact that it puts you right in the middle of
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
and it was just you want to. I mean, my what is it? My great it'd be my great grandfather. My great grandfather fought in World War One.
Was your great or your
Harry
great?
Harry Hurst fought in World War One,
So
and
he was your great grandfather? Hmm.
my great grandfather, yeah,
Okay.
Raymond's father.
Hmm.
My great grandfather fought in World War One.
Okay.
So from that perspective, it's kind of one of those things that gives me a new a new I won't say a empathy, I guess,
Hmm.
from that perspective, because other I mean, I never met my great grandfather, so it's one of those
Right.
things that I can't really, say or say that hey, I really feel sorry for him. I heard his stories or something come
Mhm.
out of it. I wasn't able to get that, but I will say that I feel for him for having to experience that. And, he died at an early age, and, that could have been very well contributed to that
Mhm.
experience in World War One after watching this film.
That's for sure.
But overall, I think everything it deserved all of the nominations that it's got. It's also,
Yeah.
again, I said earlier, it has already won a plethora of awards.
Yeah.
Too long to list. You can go to IMDb, and on either one of these films, any of these films, you can go to IMDb, pull up the film, and then click
Mhm.
on the awards button, and it will give you the long list of awards that they've already won and what they've been nominated for. This
Mhm.
particular one, I think, across the world has been nominated for over 100 because of the way it was presented and how it was done and the cast who did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give away the ending on either one of these films that we've just reviewed, but I will say that it makes you really stop and think.
Yeah, and I just like Banshees, this movie sat with me for a few days and still sits with me. Um, and it again at the end of it, I was like, I don't, uh, why? Um, I don't know that I want it to win necessarily, but I mean, I can see why it might. I can see why it's a top contender for sure.
Well, the realism, there's the realism in itself. The fact
So,
that this individual puts you right in the trenches with these guys.
yeah.
I mean, you literally feel for them. I
Hmm.
mean, it just hurts your heart that they've had to experience this and see it. I mean, I find it really interesting that this film is done from a German perspective, and they kind of realize that they were pulled into a war that they really didn't want to be into and shouldn't have been in the first place. And
Yeah.
that's
They
where I
were.
see the correlation with Ukraine at the moment, because Ukraine was, they didn't do anything to Russia. They did nothing to Russia. They were a peaceful democracy that was functioning very well. There were no issues with it. And they got thrust into war, into this situation. And they have people that are going to the front line, like I just read yesterday about a teacher, that she was an elementary teacher, and she put down her pencil and her yardstick, and she picked up a gun, and she's fighting with everybody on the front lines. She was thrust into a war that she had never thought she would even be in,
You
and
mean in Ukraine? She's Ukrainian.
she's Ukrainian. And
Okay.
then you get these Russian individuals that these guys are going, I don't want to go. They're putting prisoners and normal kids that are they are trained
Hmm.
minimally,
Mi- minimally.
minimally, they are trained minimally, and they are thrust into this environment where they're out there to try to have to protect themselves
Yeah.
from this environment, the war and what's going on with it. And they're like we saw in the news, the one soldier said there's bodies just piling up.
Yeah.
And I don't know
I mean,
if you remember the number that have been killed, the Russian soldiers that have been killed.
I don't remember.
It
Mm-mm.
just it's just it's just
But
sad.
we have to also say we do know from news reports that some of the Russian soldiers have been doing uh, they've been doing some really awful things. So it's not not all the Russian soldiers
I've
felt
been
like
thrown
they
into this. No, I mean there are some war crimes that absolutely have taken place within that particular. We're getting way off subject, but there are some war crimes that absolutely need to be held accountable for.
yeah.
Number of them, and you can follow the right news. You can look for the correct news in order
Mhm.
to educate yourself in regard to those and how you could contribute, including the ones where animals have been abandoned and they're trying to take care of them. So,
Mm.
aside from these movie reviews, and especially the last one, make sure that you kind of investigate a little bit of that. Maybe I'll put some links in the show notes. But
Yeah.
other than that, we need to wrap up really quick. We got kind of off subject. Overall, what is your opinion with All Quiet on the Western Front?
Well, I think depending on where you are in your life and what you've been through, I would recommend seeing it. But if you typically don't really want to watch a war movie and you really shouldn't, then definitely don't because it's very, very realistic. I mean, I've never been in war, but I imagine this is pretty realistic because it was horrifying. It was it was horrifying.
I would say just again, I didn't get to go. I didn't get to go. I didn't go to war. Uh, Although I was ready to be drafted way back when. That gives you a little bit of my age to the public. But I had friends of mine that were, and I've had relatives that were, and I can tell you from their descriptions, even going to Vietnam, that that's factual, and more so probably in World War One, because
Hmm.
of the fact that there was more. It was fought more on the ground than it was in the air.
Hmm.
Where these days it's fought more in the air. So I would recommend the movie if
Yeah.
you want an education as to what a World War One soldier went through in order
Hmm.
to help preserve, you know, what they went through, just all the way around, then this would give you an eye opener, and I would recommend it. I think that all the nominations that the cast and the crew and the direction and the cinematography have all been nominated for absolutely deserve to be in this arena.
Yeah.
So, yes,
I
thumbs
agree.
up for both films that we've just reviewed. Thumbs up.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, we'll wrap this up. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us here on One More Thing Before You Go. We appreciate each and every one of you. Be sure to follow us and subscribe. We are on YouTube, as you know, and I'll make sure that you'll find the link to the episode on YouTube in the show notes on the website beforeyougopodcast.com. Once it airs, you will absolutely be able to go to YouTube and watch this, which will give you a little bit more visual than just listening. But please subscribe, follow, review us, and support us through buy us a cup, and or we have a merchandise store, before you go podcast.shop, and we appreciate each and every one of you. One more thing before you all go. Have a great day. Have a great week. And thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go. Check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.